Imagine this: you wake up tomorrow, and no matter what happens, nothing shakes you. Not harsh words, not failures, not the chaos of the world. You walk through every storm calm and centered, while others crumble. People look at you and wonder, what gives this person such control, such peace? That's the moment you realize, your power was never outside you. It was always within, and in the next few moments, I'll share a story that reveals how one man discovered the secret to that inner strength, the kind that no one can take away. Part 1. Building your inner fortress. On a cold November morning, Thomas Reed stood by the window of his small apartment, staring at the gray city skyline. His coffee had gone cold, untouched for hours. He had just lost his job, again. The company said it was restructuring, but Thomas knew the truth. He had been distracted, emotional, easily provoked by small things. The slightest criticism sent him into frustration, and the stress had started to show. As he stood there, replaying the moment he was fired, his mind was a battlefield. A voice inside whispered, "You're not good enough. You'll never get it right." But another, quieter voice said something different. "Maybe this is the lesson you've been avoiding." That second voice reminded him of a book he once read, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. The words echoed in his mind like a distant bell. "You are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul." He sat down, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't reacting, he was reflecting. And in that silence, a realization struck him. He had spent his entire life reacting to the world, to what people said, to what went wrong. He was a puppet of circumstances. If things went well, he was happy. If they didn't, he collapsed. His peace depended on everything outside him. "Maybe," he thought, "I've been giving away my power." That night, Thomas made a decision. He would stop living like a servant to chaos. He would build what he called his inner fortress, a mind so strong that nothing external could shake it. The next morning, he began his first exercise in discipline. He promised himself that no matter what happened that day, he would not react impulsively. When a driver cut him off on his way to the cafe, he felt anger rise, but he didn't honk. He just smiled. When the barista got his order wrong, he stayed calm and thanked her anyway. Small victories, but meaningful ones. He realized every act of self-control was a brick added to his fortress. Napoleon Hill once said, "Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent advantage." Thomas decided to believe that. Losing his job wasn't punishment, it was training. Life wasn't attacking him. It was sculpting him. Days turned into weeks. He started waking up earlier, meditating, reading a page of Hill's book each morning. He wrote down 3 things that disturbed him daily. And next to them, he wrote, "Does this deserve my peace?" Most times, the answer was no. One evening, while walking home, Thomas saw his reflection in a store window. He didn't see the anxious, reactive man he once was. He saw someone different, calm, centered, powerful. That same night, he met an old friend, Daniel, at a diner. Daniel had always been fiery, quick-tempered, loud. When Thomas shared his new approach, Daniel laughed. "You mean you're just gonna let people walk all over you? That's weakness." Thomas smiled. "No," he said softly. "It's strength. Because when you can't control yourself, anyone can control you." Daniel didn't understand, but Thomas didn't need him to. He was no longer seeking validation. Over the next few months, Thomas faced more challenges. His landlord raised the rent. His car broke down. And his mother fell ill. Each event could have shattered him before. But now, he saw them differently. Instead of asking, "Why me?" he asked, "What is this teaching me?" He realized that peace wasn't the absence of problems. It was the presence of mastery. Every day he grew calmer, more deliberate, more unshakable. People at the cafe noticed it. Strangers respected his composure. Even the most stressful moments couldn't break through his stillness. One afternoon, an old coworker who once ridiculed him approached him nervously. "Thomas," he said, "I don't know how you do it. You're different. You seem untouchable." Thomas smiled again. "I stopped giving power to what doesn't deserve it," he replied, and in that simple sentence was the lesson most people never learn. The world will always test you, with anger, with loss, with noise. But your power lies in not reacting, in choosing peace over pride, in mastering yourself before trying to master anything else. Thomas understood now what Napoleon Hill meant when he wrote, "Control your own mind, and you may influence the mind of others. Control your reactions, and you control your world." That night, before he went to bed, Thomas wrote in his journal, "Peace is not found in a quiet life, but in a quiet mind." And with that, he closed his eyes, no longer afraid of the storms outside, because his fortress within was finally complete. To be continued in Part 2, The Discipline of Emotional Mastery. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below. Your journey to inner mastery has just begun. Would you like me to continue with Part 2, The Discipline of Emotional Mastery, in the same story tone, 1000 words next? Title: The Fortress Within, Part 2, inspired by the timeless wisdom of Napoleon Hill. Hook: everyone falls. Everyone loses something. But what separates those who stay down from those who rise again? It's not luck, not talent, it's emotional discipline. The ability to stay calm when everything around you is collapsing. The power to say, "This will not break me." And that's exactly what one man discovered when his world turned to dust. Part 2, The Discipline of Emotional Mastery. The morning sun filtered weakly through the half-drawn blinds as Thomas Reed sat motionless at his kitchen table. His business had collapsed. The investments he'd poured his heart and savings into were gone, vanished like sand through his fingers. His phone buzzed endlessly with calls from creditors, but he couldn't bring himself to answer. For hours, he stared blankly at the wall, replaying the decisions that led him here. The mistakes, the misplaced trust, the long nights that now felt wasted. But somewhere deep within, beneath the noise of regret, a single thought began to rise, calm, steady, almost defiant. This is not the end. This is instruction. He remembered a line from Napoleon Hill's teachings. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. He whispered it aloud, as if testing its truth. Could there really be benefit in losing everything? Instead of drowning in self-pity, Thomas decided to find out. The next morning, he walked through the quiet streets of the city, thinking. He noticed something he had never seen before: how restless people looked. Everyone seemed in a hurry, anxious, agitated. He realized the truth: most people weren't destroyed by what happened to them. They were destroyed by how they reacted to what happened. That day, Thomas made a vow. He would train his emotions the way a soldier trains his body. He would no longer let fear, anger, or despair dictate his actions. His mind would be his fortress, and his emotions would serve, not rule. He began small. Every morning he practiced stillness. Just 5 minutes of silence, breathing deeply, watching his thoughts come and go. The first few days were chaos. His mind screamed with worry, with regret. But he persisted. And slowly, the noise began to fade. One evening, he met his old mentor, Mr. Hale, a retired entrepreneur known for his calm demeanor even in the toughest of times. Thomas shared his struggles, his losses, his frustration. Mr. Hale listened quietly, then said something that struck him to the core. "Thomas, do you know what separates winners from quitters? Winners control their emotions. Quitters let emotions control them. It's not about not feeling, it's about mastering what you feel. Emotion is like fire. It can cook your meal or burn your house. The choice is yours." That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He thought about every time he had let anger guide his decisions, every opportunity he had lost because he reacted too soon, every sleepless night spent worrying about what he couldn't change. He realized he had lived as a slave to emotion. The next morning, something changed. When he checked his bank balance, a depressing sight, he didn't panic. Instead, he thought, "All right, this is my test. Let's rebuild smarter." He began to study again. Not the markets or business trends, but himself. He read Hill's teachings every night, underlining passages that spoke of self-mastery and definite purpose. He filled a notebook with reflections. "I cannot control the storm, but I can control my sail. Every emotion I control becomes energy I can use." With each passing week, his inner calm grew. He stopped reacting to insults, setbacks, or the doubts of others. When friends mocked his optimism, he simply smiled. They couldn't understand. He was not fighting the world anymore. He was mastering himself. Soon, small opportunities began to appear. A former client reached out, impressed by how Thomas had handled his downfall with grace. They collaborated on a small project, and it succeeded. Then another came, and another. Each success was built on a foundation of calm decision-making and emotional control. He began to notice a powerful truth. When you stop panicking, you start seeing solutions. Emotional discipline gave him clarity. It allowed him to act strategically while others reacted impulsively. Months later, Thomas stood in his modest new office, sunlight flooding the room. His business was thriving again, but more importantly, he had changed. He no longer feared failure. He had seen the worst, and it hadn't broken him, it had built him. He often told himself, "I lost money, but I found mastery." Now, when people came to him for advice, he would smile and say, "Your emotions are your employees. If you don't manage them, they'll run your company into the ground." His story became a quiet legend in his circle, the man who lost everything but gained something greater, command over his mind. And every time someone asked him how he rebuilt his life so quickly, he would say, "Because I stopped letting emotions drive the car. I let purpose take the wheel." That is the power of emotional discipline. It doesn't mean suppressing what you feel, it means guiding it. Using fear to prepare, not panic. Using pain to grow, not retreat. Thomas had become the kind of man who, when faced with disaster, smiled and said, "Let's see what this is trying to teach me." He had built not just a business, but an unshakable spirit. As Napoleon Hill wrote, "Self-discipline begins with mastery of your thoughts. If you do not control your thoughts, you cannot control your needs." Thomas now lived by that law. His emotions served his goals, not the other way around. And in that, he found the secret every successful person eventually discovers, that true freedom isn't found in wealth, but in self-control. To be continued in Part 3, The Power of Strategic Indifference. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. Your path to inner mastery continues next. Would you like me to continue with Part 3, The Power of Strategic Indifference, in the same storytelling style and 1,000 words next? Title: The Fortress Within, Part 3, inspired by Napoleon Hill's timeless philosophy of self-mastery. Hook: do you know why most people never reach their full potential? It's not because they lack talent, opportunity, or even ambition. It's because they spend their lives chasing approval. They trade their freedom for validation, their peace for popularity. But the truth is simple. The more you need others to approve of you, the more power you give them over your life. And one man was about to learn this truth the hard way. Part 3. Breaking free from the need for approval. The conference room was silent. Rows of investors stared at Ethan Cole, waiting for him to defend his failing project. The screens behind him displayed graphs that plummeted like cliffs, numbers in red, confidence in free fall. Ethan's palms were sweating. His voice trembled slightly as he tried to explain his vision, his strategy, his passion. But he could see it in their eyes, the judgment, the disappointment, the quiet disbelief. When the meeting ended, not a single hand reached out to shake his. He left the room with his head down, his dreams echoing in the hallways behind him. For months, he had built his company around one goal: to impress others. Investors, clients, colleagues. Every decision he made was based on what would win their approval. And now, standing in the empty lobby, he realized the truth. He had built everything except belief in himself. That night, he walked the city streets, lost in thought. The neon lights reflected off the wet pavement, and he found himself in front of an old bookstore he'd never noticed before. Something about it drew him in. Inside, it smelled of dust and wisdom. The shelves were lined with forgotten books, and in the corner sat an old man with a kind face, reading quietly under a dim lamp. Ethan wandered the aisles until a small leather-bound book caught his eye. Its title read, "The Power of Self-Belief," by Napoleon Hill. He smiled faintly. The name was familiar. He had heard of Think and Grow Rich years ago, but never read it. He opened the book and began to read. "Until you believe in yourself, you will forever seek permission from others." That line hit him like lightning. The old man looked up and said, "You look like someone who's been fighting for approval." Ethan chuckled awkwardly. "That obvious?" The man smiled. "You're not alone. Most people live their entire lives trying to earn applause from others who barely understand their vision. Tell me, young man, do you believe in what you're doing? Ethan hesitated. I did, but after today, I'm not sure. Then that's your real failure, the man said softly. Not losing money. Losing belief. Every great leader was once doubted. But they kept going because their confidence wasn't built on applause. It was built on purpose. They talked for hours. The man spoke of Hill's teachings, of burning desire, of unwavering faith, of independence of thought. He said, when you need others to believe in you before you act, you'll always act too late. But when you believe first, the world eventually catches up. Ethan left the shop with the book in his hand and a strange calm in his heart. The next morning, he wrote something new on his office wall. My approval is enough. From that day forward, everything changed. He stopped chasing validation. He began making decisions based on vision, not fear. He trusted his instincts again. When critics appeared, and they did, he no longer flinched. When investors doubted him, he smiled. He understood something they didn't, that self-belief was the foundation of all success. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan rebuilt his company, this time differently. He focused not on impressing people, but on creating value. He poured his heart into his work with quiet confidence, not loud desperation, and soon, results followed. One by one, opportunities began to open again. People who once ignored him now sought his advice. The irony was clear. Once he stopped trying to please everyone, everyone began to respect him. One day, a young entrepreneur asked him, how did you turn it all around? What changed? Ethan smiled and said, I stopped performing for the crowd and started performing for my purpose. He leaned forward and added, most people live their lives like mirrors, reflecting the opinions of others. But success belongs to those who live like the sun, shining from within, needing no reflection to prove their light. That single piece of advice transformed the young man's outlook. Ethan realized he had discovered something deeper than business strategy. He had uncovered the foundation of personal power, self-validation. Each night, he practiced a simple ritual. Before bed, he'd write 3 things he had done well that day, no matter how small. A decision made with confidence. A problem solved. A doubt ignored. It became his way of reminding himself that progress didn't require applause, it required acknowledgement from within. And as he did, his self-belief grew stronger than ever. Soon, even when faced with setbacks, he no longer questioned his worth. He had learned to separate who he was from what happened. He had finally understood what the old man meant. That true confidence isn't given, it's built. One evening, he returned to that old bookstore to thank the man who had helped him see the truth. But when he arrived, the store was gone. Only an empty lot remained, as if it had never existed. He smiled, holding the book in his hand. Perhaps it was never about the store. Perhaps the wisdom had come when he was ready to hear it. As he looked up at the city lights, he felt an unshakable peace within him. He no longer needed approval. He no longer needed to prove anything. He simply was. And in that stillness, he felt truly free. To be continued in Part 4. The Art of Handling Criticism. If Ethan's story inspired you, make sure to subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below. Because your journey towards self-mastery has only just begun, and in the next part, we'll uncover how to transform criticism into strength. Would you like me to continue with Part 4, The Art of Handling Criticism, in the same cinematic, story-based Napoleon Hill style, around 1,000 words? Hook. There comes a point in every person's life when they realize something powerful. Most people are too afraid to truly live. They spend their days trying to please everyone, chasing approval like it's oxygen, terrified of what others might say if they fail. But the truth is, no one who ever built a meaningful life did it by seeking permission. They did it by believing in themselves, even when no one else did. Part 4. The Art of Inner Mastery. When the young man sat across from his mentor, frustration covered his face like a storm cloud. I've done everything right, he said. I work hard, I try to please everyone, I listen to advice, but I still feel empty. The mentor, an old man with eyes full of quiet power, smiled faintly. That's your mistake, he replied. You've spent your life living for others. But tell me, when was the last time you lived for yourself? The young man hesitated. The silence stretched long enough for the truth to echo inside him. He couldn't remember. You see, the mentor continued, Approval is a trap. The moment you depend on it, you hand over your freedom. The world will always have opinions. Some will praise you, others will despise you. If you let their voices decide your worth, you'll never be free. He poured 2 cups of tea, setting one in front of his student. Consider this, he said. A great inventor once faced ridicule for his crazy ideas. They called him a fool, said he was wasting his life chasing impossible dreams. Yet he ignored them, because his belief burned stronger than their doubt. His name was Thomas Edison. Tell me, do you think he waited for approval before creating the light bulb? The young man shook his head. Exactly, said the mentor. He believed in his purpose more than in public opinion. That is the foundation of self-belief. When you build confidence on the approval of others, it can crumble in a moment. But when you build it on faith in yourself, no storm can shake it. The mentor leaned forward. If you want to grow strong, you must stop asking, do they approve? And start asking, do I approve? The loudest critics are often the ones who've never walked your path. Their opinions only have power if you let them. He placed a small mirror on the table. Look at this, he said. This is the only person whose opinion truly matters. Learn to validate yourself. Acknowledge your own growth. Celebrate your progress, even when no one notices. When you can look in that mirror and say, I am enough, then you've already won. The young man stared at his reflection. He didn't feel powerful, but something inside him shifted. He realized he had been measuring his worth by applause, not by effort. Good, said the mentor softly. Now let's talk about your next challenge, criticism. He took a slow sip of tea before continuing. Criticism is inevitable. It comes to everyone who dares to stand out. Most people crumble at the first sign of disapproval. They take every word to heart, allowing it to dictate their emotions and destroy their confidence. But those who master themselves see criticism differently. They see it as feedback, not failure. He stood up and drew a circle in the dirt outside the hut. Step inside this circle, he said. From now on, everything that happens outside it, opinions, rejection, judgment, you cannot control. But everything within it, your reaction, your thoughts, your actions, is your power. If you learn to master that circle, you can handle anything. The young man stepped in. So you mean, control myself, not the world? Exactly. The mentor nodded. The world will always test you. But your strength is not in resisting every blow, it's in staying calm through it. He told him a story about a warrior who never feared battle. Do you know why he never lost? The mentor asked. Because before each fight, he accepted the truth. War will always bring chaos. He didn't wish for an easy path. He prepared his mind for difficulty. That's why he remained calm while others panicked. The young man listened closely. So mental strength comes from preparation? Yes, said the mentor. The greatest warriors rehearse in their minds long before the battle begins. You must train your mind to stay composed under pressure. The world will throw storms at you, disappointment, rejection, loss. But if you've prepared your heart for them, they will not shake you. You will not react, you will respond. He picked up a small stone and dropped it into the calm pond nearby. Watch, he said. The ripples spread, but the pond returns to stillness. That's how your mind must be. Feel the disturbance, but return to peace quickly. The young man took a deep breath. But what about things I can't control? Loss, failure, people leaving? The mentor smiled again. Ah, now you speak of letting go. He led his student to the edge of a river. The water flowed smoothly, dancing around rocks and branches. See how the water moves? The mentor said. It does not resist. It adapts. You must learn to flow like this river. Life will not always move as you wish. You will lose things, people, opportunities. But clinging to what's gone will only cause suffering. True strength is not in holding on, it's in knowing when to let go. He threw a leaf into the river and watched it drift away. This is wisdom, he said. When you stop trying to control what you can't, you become free. The world's strongest souls are not those who fight the current, they are the ones who move with it. The young man's eyes followed the leaf. But how do I let go when it hurts? The mentor answered. You start small. Let go of small frustrations, traffic delays, people's opinions. Each time you release something, your spirit becomes lighter. Eventually, you'll realize that peace was never about control, it was about acceptance. They walked back in silence, the sound of the river still echoing in the distance. Silence, the mentor said softly, is your greatest weapon. In silence, you hear your thoughts clearly. You see your fears, your dreams, your truth. Most people speak to fill the void, but the wise listen. They listen to others, but more importantly, they listen to themselves. When you master silence, you master power. The young man nodded slowly. He felt something shift inside, a quiet confidence replacing the old need for approval. He finally understood what his mentor had been teaching him all along, that true power does not come from the noise of the world, but from the silence within. From this day forward, the mentor said, walk your path with calmness, with self-belief, and with grace. The opinions of others will rise and fall like waves. Let them. You are the ocean beneath them, vast, deep, and unshaken. The young man bowed his head in gratitude. For the first time in his life, he felt free, not because the world changed, but because he did. End of part 4. Would you like me to continue with part 5, final part, in the same inspiring Napoleon Hill story tone, with 1,000 words and a motivational ending plus call to action? Subscribe, share, comment. Hook. Every person reaches a point when the outside world no longer has the power to shake them. They stop living for applause and start living with purpose. That is the moment real strength is born. It does not come from the crowd's approval but from inner peace. This is the point when a man transforms from ordinary to unstoppable. Part 5. The power of silence and inner control. The sun had just begun to rise when the young man met his mentor again by the river. The water glistened in soft gold light, and the morning breeze whispered a calm that words could not describe. The young man stood quietly, watching the flow, remembering the lesson from before, how strength was not in resistance, but in letting go. The mentor joined him, holding a small wooden stick in his hand. He drew a single line in the sand. This, he said, is the path of an ordinary person. It is straight, predictable, easy. But it is also fragile. The moment a storm comes, it breaks. Now watch. He drew another line, but this one bent, curved, and twisted. This, he continued, is the path of the strong. It adapts. It bends but never breaks. That is the secret of mastery. The young man nodded slowly. But how do I keep my mind calm when everything around me is chaos? The mentor smiled, tapping his chest. By mastering this. When you control what is inside, nothing outside can disturb you. He led the young man to a quiet place under a tree and said, today you will learn the power of silence. Most people fear silence because it confronts them with themselves. They fill every moment with noise, distraction, and opinion. But those who can sit in silence are those who discover their real strength. They sat together in complete stillness. At first, the young man's thoughts raced. He thought about his failures, about people's opinions, about his next goal. But as the minutes passed, the noise inside him began to fade. He started noticing the sounds of nature, the chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, the soft hum of the wind. Then came something deeper, his own breath, slow and steady. The mentor broke the silence at last. What did you hear? Everything, the young man said quietly. But also nothing. It's strange. I felt peace. The mentor smiled. That peace you felt is power. In silence, your mind resets. You begin to think clearly. You stop reacting and start understanding. That is why great thinkers, inventors, and leaders value silence. Napoleon Hill himself wrote that silence is the workshop of the mind, where ideas are born and shaped into reality. He leaned closer. But silence alone is not enough. You must also master your emotions. The world will test you with anger, fear, and doubt. If you lose control of your emotions, you lose control of your life. He picked up a small bowl filled with water and said, this bowl is your mind. When it's calm, you can see your reflection clearly. But when it's disturbed, when anger or fear stirs it, you can't see anything. You make poor decisions. You act from emotion, not reason. The young man nodded, watching as the mentor lightly tapped the bowl. The water rippled. Each thought, each reaction, creates waves. Your goal is not to stop them from coming but to let them settle quickly. The mentor stood up and began walking slowly, hands behind his back. People think control means suppressing emotions. No. Real control means understanding them. When anger rises, don't fight it, observe it. When fear appears, don't hide from it, face it. The moment you observe your emotions without letting them rule you, you become powerful beyond measure. The young man thought deeply. So silence helps me understand my emotions? Yes, said the mentor. In silence, you can hear what your heart is truly saying. You realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the one who observes them. That's where peace begins. They continued walking toward the village. Along the way, the mentor stopped at a busy market filled with noise, bargaining, and shouting. Watch closely, he said. This is the world, full of noise and distraction. Most people get lost in it, reacting to everything around them. But a person who has mastered silence walks through this chaos untouched. His peace is his armor. He pointed to a blacksmith hammering metal. Sparks flew, heat burned, yet the blacksmith worked calmly, his focus unbroken. That man, the mentor said, teaches us the greatest lesson. He is surrounded by noise, yet his attention never wavers. That is mental discipline. You must learn to be like him, focused, calm, and determined even in the middle of life's fire. The young man smiled. It seems impossible sometimes. The mentor laughed softly. It seems impossible only because you still think peace depends on circumstances. It doesn't. Peace is a decision. It's something you carry inside. Once you choose peace, no one can take it from you. He paused for a moment, then said something that would stay with the young man forever. The mind is like a garden. If you don't plant good seeds, thoughts of gratitude, confidence, and focus, then weeds will grow automatically. Negative thoughts are the weeds. They don't need effort. They just need neglect. That's why you must tend to your mind daily. Nurture it with silence, with intention, with faith. The young man closed his eyes, letting those words sink deep. He realized that his greatest battle was not with the world outside but with his own thoughts. As they returned to the river at sunset, the mentor said, Do you know why silence is powerful? Because it gives strength? More than that, the mentor replied. It reveals truth. In silence, lies cannot hide. Fear loses its grip. You see life as it really is, not as your emotions paint it. And when you see clearly, you make better choices. That is the secret of successful people. They think before they speak, they listen before they act, and they stay calm when others panic. The young man watched the water again, flowing endlessly and peacefully. He understood now that this was the lesson behind every great success story: mastery of self. Remember this, the mentor said as he prepared to leave. The world will always have noise, opinions, distractions, challenges. But within you, there is a quiet place that no storm can reach. Live from that place. Protect it. That is your real power. The young man bowed deeply. For the first time, he felt unshakable. Not because he had conquered the world, but because he had conquered himself. That night, as he sat alone under the stars, he felt the same silence his mentor had spoken of. He finally understood that peace was not the absence of problems, it was the presence of control. And in that quiet moment, he made a vow to himself: no matter what the world throws at me, I will remain still inside, calm, focused, and faithful to my purpose. Because in silence, he had found strength. In calmness, he had found clarity. And in self-mastery, he had found freedom. End of part 5. Would you like me to continue with part 6, the final part, where the story concludes with the ultimate lesson of mental power, purpose, and success in a Napoleon Hill style inspirational ending with a call to action? Subscribe, share, comment. Hook. Every great transformation begins with a moment of realization. A point where a person looks within and understands that true power is not about controlling the world, it's about mastering oneself. That moment separates the dreamers from the doers, the weak from the strong, and the ordinary from the extraordinary. Part 6. The final lesson: master yourself, master your destiny. The young man stood once again by the river where it had all begun. The same water flowed, the same breeze brushed his face, but something inside him had changed. His eyes carried calmness instead of confusion. His mind was sharp, his heart steady. He had walked through storms, silence, and self-doubt, and now he had arrived at his final lesson. His mentor was already waiting for him under the old oak tree, the one that had stood strong through countless seasons. Its roots were deep, its branches unshaken. It was the perfect symbol of what the mentor had been teaching all along. The mentor looked up and smiled. "You've come far," he said softly. "But your final lesson is not about learning something new. It's about becoming what you've learned." The young man listened carefully. "Becoming?" he repeated. "Yes," the mentor said. "Knowledge without application is like a seed never planted. You've learned about emotional discipline, about silence, about letting go, about purpose. But unless you live by these truths, they are just words." The mentor picked up a small stone from the ground and tossed it into the river. "Look at the ripples," he said. "Every thought, every decision, every action creates waves that shape your destiny. The difference between the wise and the ordinary is that the wise choose their thoughts carefully. They act with intention, not emotion." The young man watched the ripples fade away. "So, the mind truly creates our future?" he asked. The mentor nodded. "That is the foundation of all success. Napoleon Hill wrote it clearly: whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But belief is not built in comfort. It's built in challenge, in persistence, in self-control." They began walking down a dirt path that led toward the village. "Most people," the mentor continued, "never master themselves. They spend their lives reacting to opinions, to fear, to failure. They allow the world to dictate who they are. But the rare few, those who change history, learn to command their minds. They do not wait for opportunities. They create them." The young man nodded slowly, understanding the weight of those words. He had once been driven by fear of failure, desperate for approval. But through his journey, he had discovered something far greater: control over his own emotions and clarity of purpose. They reached a small hill overlooking the valley. The mentor stopped and turned toward him. "Tell me," he said, "what have you truly learned?" The young man took a deep breath. "I've learned that my emotions do not control me, I control them. I've learned that silence gives me strength, that peace is a choice, and that letting go brings freedom. I've learned that success begins not with money or opportunity, but with a disciplined mind." The mentor smiled proudly. "Then you have found the truth. The strongest man is not the one who conquers others, but the one who conquers himself." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky was painted in gold and crimson. "There is one more thing," the mentor said. "Life will test you again. It always does. You will lose, you will stumble, and you will doubt yourself. But each time, remember this: your mind is the master key. Use it wisely, and you will rise again." The young man turned to him. "And if I fail?" "Then learn," the mentor said firmly. "Failure is not the end, it is feedback. Every great person you admire has failed countless times. The difference is, they never let failure define them. They used it to grow stronger." He placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Remember, emotional control, discipline, and faith are your greatest allies. When others panic, stay calm. When others doubt, believe. When others give up, persist. That is how you will shape your destiny." As the last light faded, the mentor stood up and began to walk away. "Where are you going?" the young man asked. The mentor looked back with a faint smile. "My work here is done. Now, it's your turn to teach others. That's how wisdom multiplies, by passing it on." The young man watched him disappear into the forest, his heart filled with gratitude and a quiet sense of power. He realized that the greatest gift his mentor had given him was not knowledge, but awareness. The awareness that every answer he would ever need was already within him. He looked at the river once more. Its water kept flowing, unstoppable and calm, just like life itself. He whispered to himself, "No more chasing approval. No more fear. I am in control." From that day forward, he began living his lessons. He built his work with patience. He faced challenges with courage. He walked through life with an inner peace that no chaos could touch. People around him noticed his calm energy, his focus, his quiet strength. They sought his advice, his presence, his leadership, but he never sought praise. He knew now that greatness was not about being admired, it was about being aligned with purpose. Years passed, and the young man became known for his wisdom. People would ask him the secret of his success. He would always give the same answer: I stopped fighting the world and started mastering myself. He had discovered what Napoleon Hill had written decades before, that thoughts are the architects of destiny. A disciplined mind is a magnet for opportunity. When you think with purpose, act with belief, and remain steady through storms, success becomes inevitable. As he grew older, he would often return to the same river where it all began. Sitting under the oak tree, he would close his eyes, listening to the water flow. The lessons of his mentor echoed in his mind, still alive, still guiding him. He had learned that silence was strength, that focus was power, and that emotional control was freedom. Most of all, he had learned that everything he once sought outside, peace, success, happiness, had always been waiting inside. He smiled, understanding the final truth. The greatest victory a man can achieve is not conquering the world, but mastering himself. And in that mastery, he had found everything. Call to action. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs strength today. Subscribe for more powerful life lessons, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, the journey to greatness begins within you.